is Jonathan White. I'm the manager for Elmbridge Museum in Weybridge. I'm going to be talking to you about this rather grotesque looking sandstone head. Weighing in at about 11 kilograms, around 1 3/4 stone, this sandstone head originally comes from Chertsey Abbey. We believe it dates to around the 12th century, because this is when Chertsey Abbey went under very major rebuilding, turning it into one of the most magnificent religious houses in the country. It's a very well endowed house and is famous for its very decorative floor tiles. This sandstone head has very deeply ridged forehead, deeply lined, magnificent wavy hair, very large bulging eyes and big flat nose, very fat lips and these very sort of wedge-like toothy grin, very big sort of gappy grin and wedge-like teeth. Gives the face on this head a rather bemused, surprised look, and this is perhaps can well be expected considering the calamitous and tumultuous events that this head has witnessed over the centuries. As I said, started life as a decorative piece of Chertsey Abbey, dating to around the 12th century. It was there for centuries, looking on at the serene, well-ordered life of the monks going about their daily business. However, this all changed in the 1530s when Henry VIII split from Rome. Really, the fate for Chertsey Abbey as a building was sealed in 1537. When the Abbey buildings were demolished and the building materials, this head included, were used for the foundations of a new palace built by Henry VIII in Weybridge. This was Oatlands Palace, built on the site of an earlier, older manor house. And I think, for me, this really gives a great insight and a great example of Henry VIII, who was then one of the most powerful monarchs in Europe, really stamping his authority on the religious houses and on religion at the time. You can imagine him building one of his great vanity palaces really on the ruins of an old religious monastic house. Now, Oatlands Palace went on as really one of the most popular houses used by various Tudor and Stuart monarchs for nearly 100 years. We believe it was pretty much a country haven for the Tudor and Stuart monarchs, and really one of their favourite places to hunt and hold summer hunting parties. Oatlands Palace, together with Hampton Court and Nonsuch Palace, formed the three principal residences of what was known as the Honour of Hampton Court, which is a vast hunting ground created by Henry VIII. This head, together with the rest of Oatlands Palace, saw really some very important historical events over just over 100 years of its life. It's Oatlands Palace that Henry VIII got married to Catherine Howard. It's where Mary I retired to after she acknowledged that her pregnancy was a phantom pregnancy and an illness that she wasn't really pregnant. Elizabeth I retired to Oatlands Palace when she escaped London at a time of plague. And this head bore witness to all those events buried underneath the palace below the ground. And this isn't the end of the story for the head, because in the 17th century, Oatlands Palace itself went through some very tumultuous events. In the Civil War of 1642 to 51, Oatlands Palace was one of the principal royalist bases. Prince Rupert, who was a nephew of Charles I, used Oatlands Palace as his base. Now, as Oatlands Palace had been one of their principal bases, the palace itself got demolished and torn down. All the building materials for it were sold off and used to pay the wages of the parliamentarian soldiers. All the while, this head lay beneath the ground, and over the centuries, the landscape above it changed as social, cultural, political impacts made their mark on the landscape above this head. Start off with, after Oatlands Palace was cleared, a new house was built close by, And the landscape was converted into a Georgian classical landscape garden. After that, during the Victorian period, there became a commercial market garden on the site. And then in the 1950s, a council housing estate. This fellow eventually came to light in the excavations which were started in 1968 in Weybridge. And these were true community excavations. Principal people involved with it were Brian Blake, who was then the curator of what was then the Weybridge Museum, Alan Cook from the Ministry of Public Buildings, and the Weybridge History Society was heavily involved in the excavations, and many local amateur archaeologists. Local people even allowed excavations to take place in their gardens. Such was the enthusiasm for the excavations at the time. Today, this head is one of our exhibits at Elmbridge Museum, and he stares out at all our visitors to the museum from our case on the history of Oatlands Palace. And I think really he's borne silent witness to so many calamitous events over the centuries, and been part of the demolition of 2 buildings over the centuries. I think now he's sort of safe and secure in the museum and part of the visit here. I just wonder, in fact, he's had the last laugh over Henry VIII.